disrupted.
America that I thought weird thing to happen.
Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So let's get into this wild mayhem confrontation that happened on Twitter over the weekend involving National Medical Advisor Dr. Peter Hotez, who became the new Anthony Fauci, and probably even worse than Fauci, which has been revealed, Joe Rogan, and RFK Jr., because there has been a spew back and forth on trying to actually get a proper debate, a proper decorum available to the people, to get to the audience, to actually have a proper discussion about COVID, which is something that I think everybody, including myself, would love to see at this point and around. Considering they're still continuing the lies, still misinforming people, still, bending themselves into a pretzel to continue spewing propaganda. We need to really sit down and have a full-on conversation. So, this all started when Dr. Peter Hotez, who we revealed on this channel and Joe Rogan has interviewed in the past, is not exactly the world's best health advisor. And he's not even advising himself. Joe Rogan, miraculously, just being a kind, considerate, humble person that he is, and what a great interviewer he is, was able to reveal that Peter Hotez has, poor diet. He doesn't know much about vitamins. He's uninformed about natural immunity to the point where he thinks that's a conspiracy thing, and just completely dismantled the guy in the interview. Basically, the same way Sanjay Gupta, the doctor on CNN, was dismantled by Joe Rogan by having a conversation. So, Peter Hotez then tweeted this out, and this is what started this whole thing, is he said Spotify has stopped even sort of trying to stem Joe Rogan's vaccine misinformation. It's really true, just awful. And from all the online attacks I'm receiving about this absurd podcast, it's clear many actually believe this nonsense. That's kind of a very arrogant, bold response, considering you were invited on this show, you had a conversation, you were able to have a large audience to reach to, and Joe Rogan was being humble and considerate and allowing you to speak. Now you're attacking and demonizing him and doubling down on it, saying it's the worst thing ever. And because Joe Rogan, and this is why he's hell of a time better than any mainstream program, especially daytime talk shows, is he's able to provide a variety of different guests, a variety of different conversations. That's what makes Joe Rogan's podcast so unique, and that's why people are so hungry for it, that he is the most popular podcaster in the world right now. So, it is just absurd that you get invited on, he has a nice conversation, exposes you because you basically blurted out yourself that you have poor diet and you don't even take your own advice, except, vax all the way, and this is the response you give. So this is what started this off. So Joe Rogan comes back and makes an offer. He says, Peter, if you claim what RFK Jr. is saying is misinformation, I am offering you $100,000 to the charity of your choice if you're willing to debate him on my show with no time limit. That's pretty awesome for Joe Rogan. This is him taking the high road. The fact that Peter Hotez, who is part of the insane culture, the same cultish behavior that continues to peddle against Joe Rogan and steamroll him and smear and lie and make up conspiracies about Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's offering him a chance to actually have a debate, a discussion, get his voice out, get his argument across, and he's willing to pay him for it. Even after his first tweet was slamming his entire podcast. Like, Joe Rogan is trying to be the nicest gentleman in this situation. And here's where this gets heated. Because Hotez responds back and says, Joe, you have my cell, my email. I'm always willing to speak with you. Which, that's Not an answer. You have his contact info. Great. That's nothing. That doesn't say that you're actually going to go on it. So Joe Rogan says, this is a non-answer. I challenged you publicly because you publicly quote tweeted and agreed with that dogshit Vice article. If you're really serious about what you stand for, you now have a massive opportunity for a debate that will reach the largest audience a discussion like this has ever had. If you think someone else is better qualified, suggest that person. And I tweeted at Peter Hotez. Oh my, I should have got my tweets actually. And said that if he's not willing to talk with RFK Jr., which he's already admitted on Mehdi Hassan's show when he did his media cycles, that he's willing to go on Joe Rogan, but he doesn't want the counter narrative. He doesn't want someone counteracting his narrative. So I said, if it's not RFK Jr. you want, how about Dr. Pierre Corey? How about Dr. Peter McCullough? How about Dr. Robert Malone, the guy who invented the vaccine technology that you are trying to promote? How about you invite that guy on? How about you invite on Dr. Jay Bhattacharya? How about you invite on the doctors and nurses that have specifically treated people with COVID and have had massive success rates of recovery from COVID using generic drugs like ivermectin? Why don't you bring those people on? You can actually have another scientist there if you're not okay with an environmental lawyer who has read up about the science, who has actually been quoted by other doctors. RFK Jr. is not spitting things out of the air. He's actually been approved by doctors because he's researched the medical studies. So Hotez comes back, and this again, it's exposing himself by doing this. He says, Joe, if you are serious about addressing vaccines, plus the fact that 200,000 unvaccinated Americans needlessly perish during our awful Delta BA1 COVID waves, including 40,000 in our state of Texas, because they fell victims to vaccine disinformation, I want to have that discussion. First of all, nobody dies from disinformation. Nobody's going to read an online headline or see a tweet and then automatically die. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. And he's not revealing the whole context purposely to, again, propagandize, fearmonger, and misinform you. He's the one that's providing disinformation to you by not having a proper discussion and proving his arguments. Because there's no proof, there's no evidence to this. He's just blurting out random numbers and saying they died from misinformation. Well, where's your proof? Come on the show. Discuss with us. Have a proper scientific method discussion on the science, which is what science has been doing since the dawn of science. And he says, I want to have that discussion. So do it. Joe Rogan's offering you money to sit down and have a polite discussion about. RFK's already in for it. Joe Rogan's going to be in for it. He's just going to be a mediator. He's screwing himself by continuing to double down. It shows what a phony hack this guy is. So then he responds, after saying that, because people have been steamrolling Peter Hotez and calling him a coward, a liar, a ridiculous tirade for doing this, including Elon Musk, who's the founder of Twitter. Now that he's, lost any credibility, what little he had left, he comes back and says, I'm willing to open to a number of different options. But to be pressured into giving you an answer on Twitter now with a take it or leave it demand, that's not how I work. So don't go on Twitter then. You have a couple days to come up with a better reaction then. You don't have to tweet automatically. Why don't you actually call him? Why don't you just have the debate? Take some time to have a proper argument in place. Build yourself up. go on his show and have a discussion. Like, how hard is that? How hard is that? And the fact that he's willing to pay you. He's willing to pay you to a charity of your choice, which my guess is probably something related to Bill Gates. But that's not certain, but 99.9% probable. Honestly, I don't even think that would be in your best interest. Joe Rogan's best interest is to provide context to his fans, to his audience. That's the whole purpose of this. He's not doing this to make fun of you. He's not doing this to purposely coward you into the corner. You've already done that yourself. But the reason why Joe Rogan is offering this debate is because he wants to hear all sides of this COVID narrative. He wants to have a proper discussion, which is something we should have done at the beginning of this pandemic. That is the scientific method. That's the Barrington Declaration, where people have an open discussion, talk about the virus, the origin, where it came from, who's the targeted demographic, and then find a situation, a response that goes for the targeted demographic. But what do I know? I'm not a scientist. I just read a lot of science. So, and then he says, again, I'm happy to go on and have a meaningful discussion. I respect you and your show. And I don't want an adversarial relationship. I think we can make some progress. By the looks of your tweets and the way you're counteracting, you're the one that's standing in your way of progress. You and your silly goddamn propaganda is standing in the way of having a meaningful, progressive conversation on COVID. And again, if you don't want RFK Jr., there's a vast majority of people you can have a discussion with. I gave you a whole list of other scientists, other professionals that have studied and earned their trust and respect and credit when it came to COVID. You can interview hundreds of those people. But he's not willing to do it. Because he is a coward, he is a liar, he's already proven to be a fraud, and he doesn't want it to happen on a national scale. He doesn't want a presidential candidate like RFK Jr., an environmental lawyer who's read up about COVID. He doesn't want a guy like him to dupe a guy like this. So Dan Cohen reminds us, and he's done excellent work discrediting this guy and going to detail investigations on this. Many Americans would love to see this, but Hotez would never agree to the debate because he's exposed as a fraud, a career shill for Big Pharma. I documented his numerous lies about COVID injections, ties to intelligence agencies, and decades of testing pharmaceutical products on Latin America, Africa, and Asia. And there's a long-toted history of ties with the intelligence agency and big pharmaceuticals in a global insanity to this. And we broke it down when they exposed the Pfizer files. And we put it onto Rumble. We did a whole expose on the numerous amount of times where Pfizer has been exposed, and the point where even mainstream media went after Pfizer because the lawsuits, the scandals, the lies, and the catastrophes were so enormously outrageous that they could not hide it. They could not hide it. That was when mainstream media was actually against the pharmaceutical industry. But then the pharmaceutical industry cultivated so much of their evil money that they just bought the media. So there was no investigations. Now you can't say jack squat about any pharmaceutical industry. You can't say anything about them. That is how much lucrative, evil, bloodthirsty money they have kept in vaults that they're buying out the media to hide their investigations, to hide their lawsuits away from the general public. And I love what this guy has to say, because this pretty much sums up the entire back and forth. So, quick summary. He says, wow, RFK. So, Peter Hotez says, wow, RFK Jr. and Rogan were spreading dangerous dangerous, misleading informed. Joe Rogan says, okay, come show us what we have wrong. Hotez says no. Joe says, why not? Elon Musk comes in and says he knows he's wrong. Hotez says, I'm an expert. Joe Rogan says, okay, come share your expertise. Hotez says, wow, you're all conspiracy theorist fascists. You think, as a scientist, and you want people to understand where you're coming from, you want people to, have a consensus with your theory, you would want to have discussion. That's the biggest thing about science. You want people to see your work and prove that you're right. That's the scientific method. You think that's what you would want. But Peter Hotez is not there for the science. He's not there for the health and well-being of society. He's there because he is a political pawn. He is a pawn of the corporate estate. He's a pawn of Big Pharma. He's a con artist. He's a scammer. And he could not care less about the science. He could not care less about the health and well-being of the general public. He is there to promote something. He's a salesman of pharmaceuticals. And I want to show this too because he had another response that miraculously got deleted from him. And so Joe Rogan made the offer of giving $100,000 to have a debate. And that was when he responded with, oh, you have my information, contact me, whatever. That was not his original response. His original response was, be serious, Joe. That's what you throw out for your hunting buddies on a weekend. A $50 million endowment, which you, Spotify, RFK Jr. can easily afford. Not for me, but so we can continue making low-cost, patent-free vaccines for the world's poor. That is an absurd lie. That is an absurd lie because Bill Gates, who owns the patents to the vaccine formulas, would never, ever share the information to other countries to make the vaccines. In fact, he tried to sue other countries that were formulating a similar vaccine. There is no way in hell he was trying to do this for free and low cost. You work in an industry that price gouges on the regular. That's a complete, utter lie. And people know this, and that's when they start attacking Peter Hotez for exposing himself of what a shill he is. And then he says that RFK Jr. needs to apologize. RFK Jr., who was trying to bring the science to the vaccines and showing people full context of this. RFK Jr. is not a salesman. RFK Jr. is not bought by pharmaceuticals. RFK Jr. is an environmental lawyer who is advocated by a bunch of other scientists to provide meaningful context to people. Why the hell would RFK Jr. need the public apology? If anything, it's Fauci, it's Bill Gates, it's Pfizer, it's Moderna, it's you, it's anybody else that has lied on a global scale that needs to do a public apology. Because you have already lost trust with anybody in the general public, and now you're making it even worse for yourself. People are dogpiling you because they can see how easily you expose yourself as a shill. And Matt Orfalea, with his famous montages, was also able to expose what a shill this guy is. And just to show you the lineup of media appearances that this guy has been on to, again, be a salesman. He's not interested in the science or the actual medical efficacy of vaccines. He's in it for the money. And it is clear as day in this video. Take a look.
One of the things that we're not hearing a lot about is the unique potential safety problem of coronavirus vaccines.
So before we get into I want to stop there for a second, because this is March of 2020. March of 2020. He said that the vaccines, he was jeopardizing the vaccines. He sounds a little bit like RFK Jr. there. I think he just exposed his own skepticism. Maybe he's got to debate himself now. But the thing is, what's significant about March 2020, who was president at the time? Who was the president in March of 2020? Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who started the warp speed race for vaccines, where everybody was skeptical because Trump was at the helm of this, is being exposed as political hacks, because this is what they used to say when the vaccine started rolling out. And then Joe Biden got in, a fascist wannabe with serious dementia. Now that he's become president, vaccines are safe and effective. Tell me that is not political hackery. Tell me that is not a political psyops of the deep state. Tell me that is not a phony psyops being presented as a advisor for your health. So let me bring more of this.
And then something changed.
Any vaccine released by emergency use authorization by the FDA is an outstanding vaccine.
J&J's vaccine has a risk of life-threatening blood clots.
When you hear the beep, that's the sound of safety.
So don't overthink it. They're both really good. They're all really good vaccines. Get vaccinated now.
You gotta call now.
If you wait, it's going to be really too late to protect your child.
If this was your child, what happens next could make it the worst day of your life.
So even though COVID poses zero threat to healthy children,
Vaccinate your children.
Do the right thing. Be safe and not sorry.
I'm strongly recommending for adolescents to get their 2 doses of vaccine and fully immunized after those 2 doses.
Advanced technology that can help save lives.
This is going to be a long-lasting vaccine. A long-lasting vaccine.
A few moments later.
We're seeing that 2 doses is not holding up well for emergency room visits. It's not holding up well for hospitalizations.
Here we go again.
Everyone's going to need a booster. You need that 3rd immunization.
Triple the amount.
Get that 3rd immunization. The 2 mRNA vaccines were always a 3-dose vaccine. The 2 mRNA vaccines were always a 3-dose vaccine. I've always said this is a 3-dose vaccine. I've always said this is a 3-dose vaccine. This is a 3-dose vaccine.
But I'm not done yet.
That 3rd immunization, the problem is it's not holding up. So we may have to look at sort of innovative solutions.
Oh God, not this again.
A 4th immunization, just to keep them going, to keep the country going. We have to consider some out of the box things. A 4th immunization, a 4th immunization. Get that 2nd boost, a 2nd boost to keep the country going. I've made that recommendation. A 4th immunization,
but I'm still not done.
1 semester later.
Unfortunately, the numbers are starting to trend up again. So the hospitalizations are up. And so the most important message that I have this morning is get your new bivalent booster.
Willie and Lise were saying they got their booster, and I was like, oh, I need to get mine. And then I found out they're talking about the 3rd shot. And is that the bivalent, or is it the 4th booster, or does it matter?
Don't worry so much about the number of.
There's no wrong way to use it.
You have to get it. This new bivalent booster.
You can double or triple stack them.
The new bivalent one is doing a much better job. You have to get a booster.
Yeah.
You need to get this new bivalent booster. That bivalent booster for COVID.
But does everyone ages 12 and older need a booster?
The answer is yes. Yes. And by the way, if you're over 50 and have gotten 2 boosters and more than 2 to 4 months out, you're going to need a 3rd booster as well, a 5th immunization.
5.
I don't think we're going to need an annual booster like flu.
Eventually.
Dr. Hotez supports yearly boosters, just like flu.
But I'm still not done.
It looks as though the boosters are not holding up quite as well as we'd like. And I think our thinking is going to change, and that what's going to happen is every few months we may need another booster.
Perfect results each and every time.
We just couldn't
not overcome that massive disinformation campaign, these fake concepts of herd immunity and discrediting masks.
Well, Dr. Hotez, you are a national treasure.
It is picking off young people like we've never seen.
Dr. Peter Hotez, that was extremely informative.
Disinformation that you're hearing, that kids are fine, it's nonsense. Kids need to get that vaccination.
You healthcare workers have been our saviors.
Watch out for that misinformation.
Dr. Peter Hotez is probably one of the smartest people on this topic.
If you haven't gotten your 5 and ups vaccinated yet, now's the time to do that.
Dr. Peter Hotez, thank you for saving.
Oh my God. That's probably the most painful part of that whole video. And there's more I gotta show you to this, though. Is after all that, when the media host turns to Peter Hotez, after basically just doing a sales pitch constantly, not providing any scientific information. I know he's got the lab coat and the bow tie. He looks like a scientist, but not providing any evidence or actual factual claims, just being a friggin' salesman at a car dealership. They go and say, thank you for your expertise. You're a savior. You're such a lifesaver. You're the smartest person on this subject. Well, they discredit Dr. Robert Malone, who invented the mRNA technology to get us the vaccines. This guy is apparently the smartest man you know on the subject. What little research they do to get their guests on cable outlets. Like, do they not even bother to look at this guy's background at all? Or is it just, hey, producers told me that I had to interview this quack and believe exactly what he says because this has been brought to you by Pfizer. Which is the same absurdity with every single guest they have on, which is why these shows are complete crap. Because they're not about expertise, they're not about information, it's a sales pitch. It's for you to consume propaganda by them, spewed to the masses, and consume whatever bullshit they push right at you. Oh my God. That just hurt. That's hurting my brain right now. Just the fact that they would say that. And there's more.
In the world.
They also support giving that third immunization for the 12 to 17-year-olds.
People have to feel safe.
Dr. Hotez, you are a voice of reason.
Take down the fake information.
These fake concepts of herd immunity. Our last hope is to vaccinate our way through this. Make certain that everybody's vaccinated, including their kids. That's the single most important thing right now the American people have to do.
Dr. Peter Hotez is a person that we like to go to for the sort of expertise.
The single most impactful thing you can do is make certain that you're fully boosted and preferably 2 boosted.
Later.
Monkeypox is a global emergency.
And it's accelerating among a specific social network of men who have sex with men, not because it's sexually transmitted.
Monkeypox is sexually transmitted. Almost exclusively.
Before we let you go, we have to stop and applaud you because a lot of MSNBC viewers who have watched you constantly for the last 3 years or so and have come to trust you. I don't know if they fully...
Yes, they've come to trust you because you're the only person they're allowed to have on to discuss this matter. When you have someone on constantly spewing the same message and they say you're the most trusted official, people are going to believe that because you don't provide any other context. It's like if a restaurant only provided one entree and that's the only entree they ever serve, how are they going to know other foods out there? How are they going to know about other foods if you're just going to provide them the only bologna sandwich and say this is the best thing in the world? No disrespect to anyone that likes bologna sandwiches. I don't want to be discriminatory on people's taste. But this, again, it shows the absurdity of all this. It shows what a phony hack this guy is. An absolute political psyop tool of the establishment, of Big Pharma, of the Democratic Party to push this insane, ridiculous garbage. That's non-informative. It's just a sales pitch. It's a sales pitch of propaganda and fear-mongering for you to consume the big pharmaceutical agenda brought to you by these evil, nefarious people and pathological liars. And he is cowarding away to be on the most popular podcast show in the world to have a conversation to back his claims. Why? Because he knows the mainstream media is never going to pedal back on his ass. But Joe Rogan will. RFK Jr. will. All the other thousands of scientists that disproves this guy's theory are gonna slam him down. And he's petrified. He's petrified because people already know what a stupid exposed hack he is. And here's also this, and this just shows not only shows him completely lying to the general public about his findings and not providing any evidence to back his claims, but also shows the cult-like behavior this COVID narrative is. Because it really is a cult. It's either you're on our side or you're a complete outsider, disgrace to society, where even Noam Chomsky said we need to, segregate these people away from the general public. They need to be outskirt to another part of town. Peter Hotez says, my take, far right will not adopt molnupiravir. So that's the medication that they were trying to prescribe people to treat with COVID. And he's saying that far right people, meaning skeptics, but he's associating them with far right extremists, will not take this medication. Even though, unlike ivermectin, which does not work, whereas M does, right groups can use ivermectin as a propaganda tool and a political instrument of control, tribalism, and anti-science aggression. With no evidence to support that claim. So what he's doing there is fear-mongering people and associating medications and different drugs to political ideologies, which is the scummiest thing a doctor could ever do. Because my understanding is you as a patient have the final word on what you take. That's why people go out and get second opinions. That's the whole purpose. That's the whole scientific medical community, is that they can recommend things, they can prescribe things to you, they can tell you certain things, but you as a patient always have the final say because it's your health, it's your body. But apparently in this case, if you go the other direction or have second thoughts or thinking about something else, you're considered you're using a propaganda tool, an instrument of control, tribalism, and you're anti-science. You're anti-science for reading up and getting a second opinion. And to show how much of a lie this is from the British Medical Journal. The antiviral drug, molnupiravir, does not reduce hospital admissions or deaths among vaccinated high-risk patients with COVID-19 infection. Show the results of a landmark trial that included more than 25,000 participants. Did he mention this in his tweet? No. Has he mentioned this on mainstream media? No. Why? Because that would completely disprove his claims. And I'm sure that Joe Rogan, RFK Jr., and every other scientist who is not in this cult has already proven this correct. And can give you other factual claims and scientific data that disproves Dr. Hotez. But he's not willing to debate. And here's the final kicker of this. Because now you'll understand the full story when you hear from Pierre Corey, Dr. Pierre Corey, where he says, just learned why Hotez will never debate anyone. He did some of the most gain-of-function research, gain-of-function experiments that created COVID while taking tons of money to develop a vaccine for a lab leak. And that, my friends, now you know the rest of the story. And that is why this guy is a professional con artist. He is a complete political psyop con artist. He's a scam. This whole entire thing is nothing more than selling you a scam. Because who on earth, on the basis of treating people and helping the general public, is going to create an infectious viral infection that goes around to the global community and then tries to solve it by making tons of money off a vaccine that doesn't prove it works? And because of that, Peter Hotez, just to show what a scumbag this guy is, back in 2021, because he knew he was going to get ousted at a time like this, he was trying to get into federal law that criticizing Fauci or himself or anybody else that was pushing a COVID narrative was considered a hate crime. He was trying to make scientists pushing a conspiracy, a selective, marginalized group protected by hate speech, which is really just criticism, which is what the scientific method has always taught us to do. That is how science evolves, that's how you prove science, and that's how you grow from science. You need healthy criticism. You need skepticism. That is why people are demanding for a debate like this. And Joe Rogan is being the humble adversary to do this. But Hotez, with his chicness of the bow tie and the lab coat and sitting around an office with lab equipment, looking at himself posing like a scientist, does not care about the science. Does not care about the medics, does not care about curing people, doesn't care about any of this. He is a hack job bought and paid for by the evil, nefarious corporations and political establishment used to sell you bullshit. And he's trying to double down on hiding his cronies and his criminal activity. And that's why he doesn't want to debate Joe Rogan. That's why he doesn't want to go with debate RFK Jr. Even though the scientific community, the scientific consensus demands that you go and prove your theory to skeptics in order to get the science evolved to be correct. Think of the theory of relativity. Think of all the inventions that Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison and Leonardo da Vinci and Galileo, all the greatest scientists and inventors and philosophers of mankind all across human history has had to deal with skepticism, has had to debate themselves. They've all had to do it. Apparently, in this day and age, you don't have to. Apparently, you debating someone or skepticism is considered hate crime, according to these trusted figures. The trusted figures that for years have been trying to sell you a scam and continue to do so. They are complete scums of the earth and their embarrassment to science, to health, and to society as a whole. They are a complete, utter fraud.